We are recording. Hello, everybody. Rick DiClemente here, and welcome to another episode of Astrology Unplugged. Very nice to have you with us tonight, or if you're seeing this by replay on YouTube. If you want to join us and you are seeing this on YouTube and you'd like to join us some week, then feel free to join us at 8 o'clock Eastern simply by going to Google and type in Astrology Unplugged, and that will take you to the link. Also, I wanted to remember to tell people, I've forgotten, my website is called Star Self, like yourself or myself, Star Self. And on Star Self, there is a tab that says publications or articles. One of those lists is alphabetical. One of them is by subject. So you can read through lots and lots of previous astrology articles. And my first 50 newsletters were there. They were where I was really trying to teach astrology. After 50 of them, I got more generic because I've been doing this for so long that I really don't enjoy a rigid classroom anymore. But anyhow, you might find some nice articles there that you enjoy. I do want to mention before we get started tonight that I got some very nice guests coming up. On the 26th of this month, we'll revisit the Reverend Todd Foster, who's just becoming miraculous anymore, the stuff he's doing. He's the one you remember is such an expert with the pendulum, and he's an expert on so many things in healing ways. I asked Todd to reappear for us because so many people are suffering. So many people are scared. So many people don't know how to relieve their suffering. He's going to talk to us about getting past negativity and how to empower yourself. He's got all kind of really good ideas. Next will be October 24th. Another guest who was my first guest 3 years ago, Lee Ann Fortunato Heltzel. She's going to be talking about the quantum in your future. In other words, she sits down with a person starting a small company. She sits down with a couple getting married, a person writing a book, and she takes that person to that book quantumly, because the book exists in the future. She takes you to that book that's already finished, and you take guidance from it. Fascinating, and it's really right in tune with what we're doing. Because what this show about is about astrology secondarily. Primarily, this show is about connecting to the God, the quantum center inside you. And that leads me perfectly to my third guest, who will be Linda Veros, Pittsburgh psychic. That's November 7th. And she will be talking about her rainbow connection, she calls it, which is enhancing that connection between self and other, self and God. And the reason it's so important, these subjects, they're all similar, is because we got this subject that I'm going to talk about tonight, which is Saturn and Pluto approaching each other. They're 7 degrees away. Pluto has been in Capricorn out of 30 degrees. Pluto is 2/3 of the way through. It's around 21, 22 now. It's got to go till 2023 when it exits Capricorn. And I keep telling people, the object of astrology is not to learn when to duck. That's what Nancy Reagan did. She learned when to duck, and it doesn't work. Plus, it's cowardly. So, while Pluto is making its slow way 15 years to the sign of Capricorn, here comes Saturn. Saturn is every 28 years around, and Saturn has been in Capricorn for about a year and a half, and Saturn and Pluto are both in Capricorn now, and they're 7 degrees apart, and on January 12th, they will be exactly together. I have avoided this topic for years. One of the reasons why is it's, in being honest about it, it's a very depressing transit. There are good things about it, of course, But this is the heavyweight. These two are the heavies. These two conjuncted at the beginning of World War I. They conjuncted at the beginning of World War II. They were opposite each other exactly when the Twin Towers fell. That does not mean, it does not mean we're going to have another world war. It doesn't mean we're going to have another catastrophic event similar to 9/11, but it's very probable. I'm not going to play with you tonight. I'm going to tell you what I think. Because there's a real habit when you're a new astrologer, I'm at this 41 years, but there's a real habit, young people, young astrologers, and people who don't have experience in astrology don't want to hear negative things. They want to hear all is well ends well. Well, I'm not here to make you feel better. I'm not here to make you feel worse. I'm here to tell you the truth about astrology. Now, I wish I could, but I can't do it. Now, there are people that this Saturn and Pluto will go over, they won't even notice it. There are people who will get stronger, and there are people that will get smashed. It's going to depend on their karma and their individuality and many things. So, when you pick up a book like this, Cosmos and Psyche by Tarnas, he writes chapter after chapter about Saturn, Pluto. This book is about Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. The outer transits and what they did every time they squared, opposed each other, or conjuncted. And he goes way back in history. And event after event after event after event. Fabulous. This is not casual reading. He's very academic. He's extremely brilliant. And I'm just going to give you a paragraph from his writings on what he calls Saturn and Pluto. Okay? When Saturn and Pluto combined, whether that's by conjunction, whether it's a sextile, whether it's a square or opposition. He writes accordingly. The Saturn archetype encompasses all that involves boundaries and limits. Liza and I had a lot of fighting about this one. We're having a lot of really heavy-duty discussion about this word limits, which I disagree with, and she agrees with. But there's a lot of discussion to be had about that. It defines and grounds, constricts and solidifies. Saturn expresses itself in discipline and control and rigor and rigidity, repression and oppression. It rules judgment, guilt, the consequences of past actions, karma, error and fault, defeat and failure. It does a lot of good things too. A lot. Deflation and decline, depression and sorrow. Saturn is, in Nietzsche's phrase, the spirit of gravity, both heavy and dark. In Freud's terms, it is the reality principle, the delays and resistances to gratifications, the obstacles and diminishments presented by life's exigencies. Saturn is the conveyor of the hard truth, naked and unadorned, instructive, sobering, and often painful. It is the bottom line, the workings of necessity, the inevitable and the inescapable. Now, you will learn in astrology, Saturn has probably the worst reputation of all. You also see, as an astrologer, Saturn is the most critical planet in your chart. You're just not going to succeed unless your Saturn is involved. Now, where my argument is, I'm not going to get into this tonight. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. Saturn is the planet of coalescence. Things coalesce, things crystallize. Saturn is responsible for taking spirit and giving its shape into form. Now, that's what it does. The whole article and discussion about limitations and restrictions is for later. I discovered by writing that book I discovered at the very end of it that Saturn is always doing one thing. One thing. I tried to find that for all the planets, and I couldn't do it. But Saturn is always doing one thing, and that is making sure. You see this big, huge ice ring around the planet. It contains Saturn, and in the old days, before telescopes, it was the farthest you could see with the naked eye. Saturn. So, people are afraid of Saturn just like they're afraid of Pluto. People don't understand Saturn. Saturn is, how do I say this? Almost every time Saturn hits you, something bad's going to happen. Almost every time. And at the same time, a lot of good things can happen. I've seen a lot of people awarded. I've seen a lot of people promoted. I've seen a lot of people get disease. I've seen a lot of people have disease and get rid of it. So don't try to put a blanket statement on Saturn. What is Saturn Pluto? And this is the reason I have been putting this off for so long, because I didn't want to talk about it. Saturn Pluto are the sounds of the Nazi boots. And if you can't hear the Nazi boots right now, then I suggest you have your ears examined. It's the sound of the far right. It's the sound of the coldness, the taking people from the Bahamas and closing our door to them, closing our door to sick people in South America, putting little kids in jail. I don't have to tell you all this. Now, when it combines with Pluto, Pluto is not exactly the friendliest planet either. So this is the main reason why there are not, by the way, I'm going to get into each sun sign tonight. Each sun sign is going to experience Saturn and Pluto in what house. Jim and I will experience it in what house. We'll talk about that also. Saturn and Pluto, when they work together, one of the reasons astrologers drop astrology is, for example, when they try to see Aquarius mixing with the moon, or they start, astrology is an art of mixing energies, 2 or 3 or more. What if they have a major Aquarius theme in a chart and a major Cancer theme? These two guys are such strange bedfellows. They're almost opposite of each other. So when you start to mix the two, you got to be very talented. You got to have a really powerful sense of intuition. And as I told my students, when you start to mix the energies, don't be afraid of being wrong. Because you're probably not wrong. You're probably warm, and you can get warmer. So when you mix two energies together, that's the art. 1 + 1 = 5,000 in astrology. 1 + 1 is 5,000. One planet's already 2,000 possibilities, and other planets already 3,000 permutations. And when you mix them together, who knows? But Saturn and Pluto is a time when you got to get serious, and they could be doing this in Sag. They could be doing this in Aries. But no, they're doing it in the sign of Capricorn. Okay? So there's going to be an extra Saturnian sense to it since Saturn rules Capricorn. Since Saturn is about institutions, and it's about making things work, and Pluto is about testing your purity, I'll tell you right now what this means. And I've been saying it for years, and people don't want to hear it, and I really don't care. You're going to hear it. That doesn't mean you have to listen to it. Doesn't mean you have to believe it, but I'm going to say it. Saturn and Pluto, the main thing Pluto is doing in Scorpio right now is testing the United States to see if we continue to deserve to have as much power as we have had, and we don't. Pluto is here since 2008 to test us whether we are using our powers correctly or abusing them. And I've often said that in one way, the worst thing that ever happened to us was winning World War II. Of course, it was a great thing that we won it, and the Nazis didn't. But what it did is it gave us this false claim of being the police of the world and having 170 bases around the world. And we think we're special. This is the problem. We're not learning. Some people are learning. Some people are trying. Some people are generating grassroots campaigns. Some people are trying. But there are a lot of Americans walking around thinking, yeah, but we're America. Yeah. Well, so what? How would you feel if a Uruguay wanted to come to your town and put a military base? How would you feel if Northern Australia wants to put a naval base in the ocean near where you live? You see, what goes for them doesn't go for us. That will not stand. That's what Saturn and Pluto is going to test. And what we're going to try the heavy boots. We're going to try the right-wing talk. We're going to try the scary military talk. He already wants a military parade, right? He's going to try to use the heavy-fisted method. And you cannot use the heavy-fisted method in God's world. It will fail. Power versus Force. That's the first book by David Hawkins. Force doesn't work. Power does. Power means you're aligning yourself and surrendering to a greater force that's working through you, which we all know is the truer force, which is the force that never can be argued with. It's always correct. It always satisfies all. And we know what the heavy boots do. So, if you want to know what's going to happen, I don't know, but I can give you some ideas. I've been sharing this talk with another astrologer. I won't name it at the moment. And I thought his analysis of it was brilliant. I asked him what he thought of the coming Saturn-Pluto conjunction. He thought it was going to be a revolution and the congealing together of the powers that be to make sure that they don't lose power. See, the only way, this whole image of the wall is the perfect image for this whole decision here, this whole concept. The wall is mythical. The wall was there for one reason, to help Donald Trump deal with his own Saturn-Venus conjunction in Cancer. In other words, he has successfully been able to block out everybody in his life, block out all light. And we know that doesn't work. Closed systems always fail. Absolute power always fails to the degree that it's absolute. So we know that when you can sit there and literally watch this wall and everything about this wall, and you're going to see an exact one-to-one correspondence to what's happening to all of us in the next couple of years. The wall is a pseudo method to keep out the bad guys, the shithole countries, the scum of the earth, right? This is the way a sick mind operates. Well, Mr. Trump's Saturn, Venus, and Cancer, which I've been talking about et al. For a long time, will be hit exactly by Pluto in December and January. Mr. Trump's Saturn, Venus, which is the weak spot of his chart, is going to be opposed by Pluto exactly. It's been close. Exactly in December, Christmas time, January, at the same time of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which means his Saturn-Venus is going to be hit by Saturn-Pluto at the same time. And it's my opinion that a very sick individual has no recourse. He's not going to be able to continue stitching the little pieces together. Okay, now, one of the problems you have with Saturn-Pluto, the biggest problem is denying it. There's no climate change. We don't have to do anything. And the biggest wonderful thing you can do, and this is something I want you to hear about. I've done this a long time. I've got cartons of egg on my face. I'm not afraid to go off the limb. But what I've learned is you can't go around just warning people planets are coming. That's the wrong way to do astrology. That's the wrong way. This planet's coming. If you don't do something, it's going to kick your butt. That's the wrong way to do it. Now, there's some truth to that in terms of one day it's going to come. But when I was talking to Susan earlier, before the show started, and she's going to get hit real hard by Saturn and Pluto. And she's an exemplary person, in my opinion, in terms of the strength of Saturn and Pluto. This is a time when your strength comes to you. It is an opportunity. I'm not trying to be jive. In other words, we're going to have to rise to the occasion. People are going to feel like rising to the occasion. And if we don't rise to the occasion, we got trouble. That's what it's all about. That's what Saturn and Pluto is all about. And that's why it's pushing us to the edge of all these frightening stories we hear about how much time the climate has left. That's no joke. That's for real. Now, what does Saturn and Pluto do when it comes into your chart? It makes you feel like not messing around anymore, if you have been. And if you continue to mess around, lo and behold, I feel sorry for you, okay? Because your insides will self-destruct, not something out there. If you continue messing around, avoiding your responsibility for the self, it's not the world's going to come get you. You're going to blow up from inside because Pluto's going to do away with you. I've been doing a lot of work on how we draw things to ourselves and in regard to self-defeatist attitudes, death wishes. And I really am of the opinion that Pluto will give you so much time, and Pluto is so altruistic, it is so full of love, that it will blow you up at the very end rather than you getting in the way of human evolution. Pluto is about human evolution. And it looks like some bad guy just came and got you. It's not what it is. Your own Pluto will just destroy you just to get you out of the way. Because Pluto is remove the obstacles so that life keeps unfolding. Now, before I get on to much more of this, I do want to go into each sign of the zodiac, okay? To talk about what Saturn and Pluto are going to do for you. And this is not going to be a surprise to you because Pluto has been sitting in this mythical house for you since 2008. 11 years it's been there. Now Saturn's with it. So what I'm saying, there's gravity in this area. If things are under construction in that area, houses or areas of your chart, that area needs more construction. What am I doing? Sitting there working on rebuilding a 100-year-old house. Piece by piece by piece, Liza and I are rebuilding this old house. Okay, let's start with Aries. Now, how do you figure out where Saturn and Pluto are? You put Aries on the first house, and Saturn and Pluto will be coming from the 10th house. They're coming from Capricorn. Okay, so what that means, and Aries don't usually have much trouble with this. I'm being very general here. Some signs will have a much harder time with Saturn and Pluto than others. The pressure that Aries will have in their 10th house means they need to make their mark upon the world. Usually Aries don't have any trouble with that. Aries is a very confident sign. I want to go do this in the world. I'm adventurous. I want to go do that, and let's go do it. Do you have the balls and the strength to stand up and stake your claim? Most Aries do. So I'm going to tell you real clearly, Aries people, if you're shy about it, it's going to get stronger. You're going to get more ability to do so. If you have real problems with doing it, like something happened to you with your parents, or you've been taught that success is really failure or whatever it is. You're going to have to face these demons and learn how to go out into the world, make your statement, declare your stake, and make your move. Aries are very innocent people. They have lovely intentions. Taurus. So we go to Taurus. How do you do that? What's across from Taurus? Scorpio. Okay. 7th house would be Scorpio. Sag. So it's 9th house. It's all going to go backwards. So for Taurus people, the Saturn and Pluto has been and will continue to be pressure in their 9th house of philosophy, of travel, of expansion of mind. Now, the difficulty there is this. Taurus usually, the general sign of Taurus, they're not all like Erica sitting here with a very broad mind. A lot of Tauruses are very narrow-minded, okay? So it's going to be very simple for Taurus. Are you living your mindset? Are you living what you've been saying, what you've been proclaiming? Does your belief system match what you do? And if you think you're going to fool it, you cannot fool Pluto. You can't do it. It will embarrass you in the middle of church, in the middle of the grocery store. You're going to be seen for what you are. On the other hand, if you then have trouble manifesting, walking your walk and talking your talk, this Saturn Pluto will help you. You may go back to school. You may do more learning that will help arm you and help you become more aware and modify your philosophy. So you're living your philosophy. That's what the 9th house is. Gemini. Put Gemini in the 1st house. Across from Gemini is Sag. 8th house is Saturn, Pluto in Capricorn. Now this is a real strange bedfellow. Okay? Gemini and the 8th house are about as far apart as you can get. Because Gemini is real lighthearted and playful and childlike, and the 8th house is the opposite. It's intense, it's Hades, it's taboo, it's up the dark alley, it's deep psychology, etc. It's a real stranger to Gemini. I can't say what will happen exactly to Gemini, but this will be your chance to go deeper. Gemini, it will be in Gemini, Sag, 8th house. It will be in the 8th house in the sign of Capricorn. I'm reacting to one of the statements at the bottom of the computer. So, Geminis, it's not expected you become Freud overnight. It's not expected you become a major psychologist, but your deeper parts are going to want to come out. And Gemini is very misunderstood. Everybody thinks Gemini is so shallow, and many times they are, but they oftentimes have a much deeper quality that they let on. So it's time for Geminis to come out with it. Now, the real difficulty with Gemini is going to be this. There's no doubt about it. If you think you can play around with your marriage, if you think you can play around with your relationship and play with your little toe in the water, you better get away from the pool fast, because the 8th house is a house of you totally diving in naked. Total commitment to the other. Gemini's nice and fun and games, okay, till somebody gets hurt. The 8th house is the heaviest place of the zodiac. So what I'm saying to you is, I don't know what your answer is going to be. But I can tell you, don't try to fake it in the 8th house. Don't try to fake a relationship that has deep, close, intimate qualities when it doesn't. I'm not saying you got to change, become that way, but I'm saying the pressure is going to be on you to get deeper in that sense, and it'll be up to you whether the water's too hot, it's too hot in the kitchen, or whether you can, in fact, lay the intellect aside and go deeper with the heart, which you see with some Geminis. Okay, the next sign, Cancer. Cancer's having it out with the sign opposite. Cancer is in the first house. Capricorn is over in the seventh. So for all cancers, this has not been easy either. For all cancers, this is all about relating to the other. So Cancer is by default, and thank God we got them, because they tackle one of the hardest lessons there is for the sake of all of us. Cancer is about, I take care of myself. And you got to have that. I don't care what you're doing. Look around you. Look at how many people are in trouble because they don't. Now, Cancer gets in trouble because it becomes too much. It becomes too much obsessed with taking care of the self and not enough attention to taking care of the self plus the other. So you're not going to fake this planet out. You're not going to get in a relationship and act like I got a good relationship when the real primary intuition and intention is to take care of the self. Ain't going to work. Will not work. The seventh house is I give to you because I'm giving to myself. Like I was telling Liza last night, in my opinion, the only planet that really exists, the other ones are myths, the only planet that exists, in my opinion, is Neptune. Neptune's the only planet that sees God's oneness, that all things are one. And what you do to the other, you do to yourself. This is not an instruction of behavior. It's the statement of truth. What you do to the other, you do to yourself. It's a real nice catechism lesson. It's a real nice summer Bible course lesson. And it's so noble. Treat others as you would treat yourself. Blah, 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 blah. But you can't fake it out with the other. That's what have I been saying since '08? The United States, because we're a Cancer, the United States has to get better at treating other countries. And what are we doing? Just spitting on them worse than we ever have. We're doing exactly the opposite. Other countries are like, what's with you? We're going to just remove your channel from the dial for a while. Come back when you got a new channel. We'll tune you back in because you guys is crazy right now. So that's what Cancer has to do, and it's counterintuitive. Because if I help you, it seems that I'm opposite. It seems that I'm not taking care of myself. How can I take care of you when I'm trying to safeguard what happens to me? You can't. And see, Cancer's not ready for all these Neptune lessons of I am the other. But remember, in all Cancers that you know, we have mixtures of all these different planets. And we get energies from Pisces, and we get energies from other places and all. So that's what's going to happen to Cancer. So I don't have time to read any, some people are sending texts, so I'm sorry I can't respond to any texts. I'm too busy trying to keep up with this 67-year-old brain. Okay, Cancers go pick up strength. And that's what has to happen in the United States as a Cancer. We've got to become stronger and develop real relationships. What is wrong with us that we raped South America, that we raped Africa? What the hell is wrong with us? That we couldn't have spent the last 50 years helping them develop and helping them develop in Africa. And it would all been a win-win-win-win-win. And now we see what happens since we've destroyed so many countries. Their hobbling masses are trying to find a next drink of water and place to sleep. It's backfired on us. You cannot fool the zodiac. Leo. Leo's next, and across from Leo is Aquarius. So Capricorn's down in the sixth house. Okay? So for Leo people, the pressure is on to develop themselves better, to become more tuned. It's got a Virgo influence, the sixth house. It's all about becoming finer in your skill sets, etc. Leo's very good with creativity, very strong, but Leo is going to need to pick up Virgo habits, be more careful with your health, with your diet, and get get away from everything always being whether you're getting kudos from the environment, the applause from the audience. You got to get away from that and come back and own your own personal dedication to getting yourself strong and right. That's Virgo. Okay. I kind of got to hurry. It's just the way it is. Virgo's next. Okay, so Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, fifth house. Capricorn's in the fifth. Now, the fifth house just doesn't mix with Virgo. The fifth house is the Leo house. The Virgo house is all about, I don't express myself. I keep my mouth shut and I'm humble. The fifth house is about, I express myself. In the Virgo house, the Virgo sign has got to learn that it's okay to express themselves. It's okay to have fun. It's okay to do something other than I should. That's the problem, the singular problem with Virgo, is they think they're doing right by aligning with what they should do. Well, when you align yourself with what you should do, you're not strengthening at all who you are. All you're doing is getting a better report card on how well you followed instructions. So, Virgo's about this next couple years becoming more lenient with themselves. I knew a Virgo recently, and I tried to talk her through this, and she's had 2 or 3 concussions in a row. And I know exactly why it's happening, because she won't let herself have any fun. She's just so hard on herself. And man, she did not want to hear it. Didn't want to hear it. She's that tightly engulfed in this sense of I can only do what's right. I'm not the judge. So get a little bit looser with yourself. The next sign of Libra, we're halfway through. Libra, Capricorn will come to them from the 4th house. And I'm telling you, look around. I have seen all around Libras torn up. Look around you at the Libra people. Look around. And there's stress upon their faces. And they don't like that because they're real proud of how they look. And they usually look really pure and pleasant and classy and stylish. It ain't working. Because it's not a time for them to develop their style or turn into meta style. It's time for them to develop their emotions. 4th house. They're very clever. They're the most street savvy sign there is. Savviness is not going to trick emotions. Emotions trick emotions. And what's so sad about it is most Libras I know have a very nice set of emotions. They're very pleasant people. They're very nice. They're charming. They don't like conflict, but they're just not built for emotional exchange. Well, Pluto has been banging them around since '08, and I've seen some Libra people I can't even recognize. And that's exactly why. That's what happened. What happened to McCutcheon playing center field for the Pirates? They wonder what happened. It's exactly when it happened. As soon as he got married, his career went down. Not that the marriage caused it. He had to come face to face with his emotional nature. And he's never been back up. So, Libra is about intellect, teaching the intellect. They're smart people, but it's not time for smartness. It's time for emotional development. And in the scheme of things, the intellect is rather worthless compared to the strength and the inherent knowledge of the heart. Scorpio. She said there, she went, Dr. Kim gave her one of these. Exactly right. Scorpio, they're getting Capricorn from the 3rd house. Scorpio, Sag, Capricorn. Okay, now this should do very fine. You Scorpios shouldn't have much of a problem at all because that's symbolic of deepening the mind, Scorpioning the mind, Saturnian the mind. Well, Scorpios don't have any trouble with getting deeper or more intense with the mind. Scorpio is the psychologist, so I don't see much difficulty with them at all. Sag. Sag is having Capricorn in their second house. You see where this is getting to. Us Capricorns get it in the first house. Okay. Sages are having it happen in the second house. Second house is your money, your values, your things, your collections, your sense of well-being. So what's happening with Sages, I really have not played with many of them in the past few years. They don't usually come for readings. Sages have been having to rebuild their whole sense of self-worth. And the challenge there is Sag is a lot of talk. Sag is a lot of talk. A lot of talk. And the second house doesn't get by with talk. So Sagittarius have really done a lot of work. They've had added abilities. They've summoned new strengths from Pluto. So now they're really being tested on how do they really feel about themselves? Do they really feel worthy? And usually Sagittarius don't have much trouble because they're just not a negative sign. They're just an optimistic sign. So they should do pretty well. Capricorns are getting the hell beat out of them because they're in their own sign. Saturn and Pluto is coming through Capricorn, and their sun is there. So we're seeing you need when you're Capricorn is more Capricorn. So the thing I said last week, I think really pertains here. One of the best things that Capricorn can do in the near future is to be careful not to be too careful. You see, when you're in trouble, you always go to your sun sign. You always go to your sun sign. And a Capricorn goes to its sense of being careful. Cancers go to its sense of taking care of myself. Scorpios go to embracing tighter with their partner. So, since Capricorn's answer is always to be more careful and be cautious and make sure, you can't always use that answer. So you got to kind of deceive yourself. The answer with Capricorn is simple. You got to let go and trust. You got to let go and trust. Well, when I bring up that word, I got nothing enough to say on Capricorn. That's the answer. Aquarius, they're getting it from the 12th house. So what's happening with Aquarius, and I don't think they're having much trouble with it because they're so bright, it's coming from the unconscious mind. I'm getting a little static here. Let me see. There it is. Coming from the 12th house, Saturn and Pluto are bringing things from past lives, from dream states, from the deep unconscious. And if there's any sign in the zodiac that's really prepared to deal with those kind of issues, it is Aquarius. Because Aquarius is open to everything. They're very smart and they're intellectually open to everything. They may have some difficulty with emotion like the Virgo sign or the Libra sign. So Aquarius is kind of a stranger to them to deal with emotions because they're kind of cool. They're very friendly, but they're cool. So I would encourage Aquarians to be much more emotional. Finally, and there's always the last sign of laugh. Aloof is exactly right. Pisces. Pisces, the Capricorn is coming to them from the 11th house. The 11th house is the house of hopes and wishes, friends, groups, organizations. And I kind of like this because what it says to me is, in a lot of ways, Pisces people are very irresponsible. They want to float away by themselves. They won't give you a reason. They just floated away by themselves. Okay, and it's Neptune's nature to do that. But sometimes when you do that, you're breaking a contract. And sometimes when you do that, you're breaking a responsibility that you have. So I think the 11th house pressure that's on Pisces is for them to learn to be a better team player in the next few years. So I've given it to you there, my brief analysis of how I see it in those signs. I was talking to Dr. Wilson here before the show started. And by the way, I will be speaking this coming Sunday at Pittsburgh's Spiritual Church, 11 in the morning. More of that found on my Facebook page. And I've been thinking a lot about this. The other night I was sitting around, and it was the night I think 5 planets were in Virgo. And I was just saying, wow, 5 planets in Virgo, Saturn and Pluto together in Capricorn. Imagine a kid being born then. Imagine this child. But something hit me. Boom. And it was, you got to stop treating this like it's a novelty, like it's an intellectual exercise. This has to become your lifestyle, period. And I was thinking about what the Course in Miracles says, and there's some really beautiful passages in there where Jesus said to, now here's my cat who senses that it's almost 9 o'clock. So you came and clipped me to get your meat. Okay. Jesus said to the human ego, he says, I have a complete 100% relationship with God, the Father. The difference between me and you is that's all I have. I thought that's just so profound. And I started thinking about us humans. What do we have? We got TV, we got a partner, we got a car, we got a little place we can go visit by the lake, we got songs we like, we got music. But like Kim was saying earlier, and Nick says in his book, Nick Arandes, when all you want is God, that's all you'll have. So that's what the Saturn Pluto is about. There are other times when the zodiac has you work on a corner piece, it has you work on the windows, has you work on the roof. But when Saturn and Pluto involved, it has you lifting up the statue so you can get a whole new foundation under it. Lifting up the statue so you can put a whole new foundation under it. We've been waiting for months to get a new foundation under Michael. It just came out of nowhere. That's what we're doing in the next several years. We're not going to get by changing the words on the Statue of Liberty. We're not going to get by with these yakking phonies in the Congress. We're not going to get by the hell's creation of this darn coming election that's going to drive us all nuts. We all know the answer. We all know the answer. Saturn and Pluto is about replacing, replenishing, and strengthening our foundation. It's my opinion. Other astrologers look here and they look there, and there are many different things to look at, but it's really that simple. It's a matter of, what did I write? And this comes right from Tarnas. It's a matter of mobilizing grit. He's on stage mentally putting Saturn and Pluto together. Just type in Richard Tarnas into YouTube. He's got some marvelous talks on the Uranus-Pluto age that we just went through, etc. By the way, I do owe you all an apology. I've been wrong for months now because I wasn't doing careful enough work. When Eris came to us around 2005, she was not square to Pluto. She was in trine to Pluto. Thank God. They were both around 21 fire. They were trine to each other, which is much more harmonious. I don't think we could have survived if Pluto came on this, if Eris came on the scene square to Pluto. It was just too much. So they've been trine to each other, which is 120 degrees, which is much more favorable. So Tarnas talks about forging deep structure, and we have to shoulder new responsibilities. So what have you seen? Every darn institution you can think of has crumbled because of corruption. Just about everyone I could think of: banks, colleges, Boy Scouts, NCAA, Catholic Church. I don't need to go on. And they're doing so because they're not based in truth. And the only way you can be based in truth, in my opinion, is to be based in what Jesus and the other Muhammad, what they've been teaching us. To be based in the love of God. So that's it tonight. I'm not going to really do any more with this. Or take any questions or anything. I think it is stark. It's going to get much, much heavier when we get near December and January. And you're going to hear a lot of people freaking out. And a lot of people are writing to me saying, tell me it won't be this bad. And I'm saying, no, I'm not going to tell you that. I'm not here to make you feel better. I hope you're right. I hope you're right. But I know you're right if you work on this. I know you're right if you work on this. And that's why our next 3 guests over the next 3 months will be all about that. And Stuart can tell you how true that is. Say that's right. I love y'all. I'll see you next week. This will be on YouTube tomorrow. Good night.